I remember the day he said no to me. A simple no, but it plunged my entire world into chaos. I am Sloan Thorne, a CEO, a name synonymous with power and multi-million-dollar deals. I was used to having everything under my control, used to everyone always saying yes. But then a man, an ordinary man, a masseur at a quiet spa, dared to refuse my $1 million offer. That feeling, it wasn't just rejection. It was public humiliation, a deep jarring crack in the perfect facade I'd meticulously built my entire life. The whole world seemed to be laughing at me. I hated him. I wanted to destroy him. But then, as I dug deeper into the shadows, searching for his weaknesses, I uncovered a secret that left me speechless and shattered everything I ever believed. This isn't just a story about money or power. This is a story about the masks we wear, about the hidden wounds we carry, and about how sometimes what we desperately seek lies exactly where we least expect it. Have you ever felt like your entire life was heading in the wrong direction, all because of one unexpected moment? Share your feelings in the comments. I'm Sloan Thorne, and this is my story. My world in those days was a high-octane blur. The Thorne Group. My empire felt less like a crown and more like a crushing weight pressing down on my temples. Deals were stalling, a major acquisition in renewable energy was teetering on the brink of collapse, and my father Marcus was breathing down my neck, his expectations a constant suffocating reminder of the family legacy. I was Sloan Thorne CEO, a name synonymous with ruthless efficiency and unyielding control. Everyone saw the polished exterior, the woman who commanded boardrooms with a single glance. But beneath the power suits and the perfectly coiffed hair, I knew the truth I was unraveling. Sleep had become a luxury I couldn't afford, a fleeting ghost in the dead of night, and peace felt like a foreign concept, utterly unreachable. My usual coping mechanisms, those late-night strategy sessions fueled by black coffee, the punishing workouts that left my muscles screaming, were failing me. I felt like a tightly wound spring, ready to snap at any moment, the pressure building to an unbearable peak. My assistant, Alara, bless her incredibly efficient heart, was the only one who seemed to notice the cracks forming in my facade. She saw the dark circles etched beneath my eyes, the slight, almost imperceptible tremor in my hands when I reached for my morning espresso. Miss Thorne. She'd said one particularly brutal Tuesday, her voice laced with genuine concern, a rare commodity in my world. I've found a place. It's different. Not the usual gilded cages you tolerate, no paparazzi, no socialites trying to network at the steam room. Just quiet. I'd scoffed a dry, humorless sound that felt alien even to my own ears, but the desperation she spoke of was a cold, real thing churning in my gut. I craved anonymity, a space where my name meant absolutely nothing, where I wasn't expected to be anything but a body in desperate need of respite, just for an hour, just for a moment to breathe. I remember the drive to the sanctuary, feeling the tension in my shoulders grow with every passing block in the taxi. It was nestled in a quiet, unassuming corner of Chelsea Worlds, away from the gleaming, arrogant towers of Midtown, where my office resided. It was almost jarringly understated, a dark wood facade aged by time, with a single hand-painted lotus flower on the sign. Nothing flashy, nothing to suggest the caliber of my usual haunts. My ingrained skepticism warred fiercely, with a strange, almost childlike hope that felt utterly out of place for a woman of my standing. Inside, the air was thick with a scent I couldn't immediately place earthy, calming a profound contrast to the cloying artificial incense of typical high-end spas. There was no elevator music, no intrusive chatter, just the gentle, soothing murmur of water from some unseen feature. The receptionist, a woman whose eyes seemed to hold ancient wisdom and an unnerving calm, greeted me with a serene, almost knowing smile. "Full session, Miss Thorne." She asked, her voice soft, as if she knew my name was just a formality here easily shed at the door. I simply nodded my voice, a rasp still caught in the vice of my own tension. Then he entered. Orion Vance. My gaze, sharp and assessing by nature, took him in immediately. He was younger than I expected, with eyes that held an unsettling stillness, a quiet intensity that immediately set him apart from anyone I'd ever encountered in a service industry. There was no fawning, no manufactured deference, just a polite, almost detached professionalism that was utterly disarming. As his hands, surprisingly strong yet incredibly gentle, began to work on my shoulders, a jolt went through me, something more profound than mere physical relief. It was as if he could feel the very tension of my soul, mapping the stress points hidden deep beneath my skin. For the first time in years, I felt something akin to peace, and that I realized was terrifying. The next day, the memory of Orion's touch clung to me, a phantom sensation on my skin, unsettling and utterly disorienting. I, Sloane Thorne, who routinely controlled boardrooms and commanded fortunes, had been disarmed, rendered strangely vulnerable by a simple masseur. It wasn't just the physical relief, it was the unsettling calm he'd invoked, a quiet rebellion against the chaos of my life. This feeling, this new, strange vulnerability gnawed at me. I needed to understand it, to categorize it, to frankly control it. It felt like a direct challenge to my very being. So I returned to the sanctuary unannounced, stepping out of my sleek black car with a familiar air of command. I saw the flicker of surprise in the receptionist's eyes, the same woman with the ancient knowing gaze, but I was beyond caring about formalities or appointments. My singular focus was on him. Within minutes, I was back on his table, the familiar earthy scent of the room filling my senses, a strange mix of anticipation and raw defiance swirling within me. I lay there listening to the soft murmur of water, my mind replaying our last encounter, preparing for the next round. He walked in his presence as quiet and impactful as before. "Miss Thorne." Orion murmured, his voice a low, even tone, utterly devoid of any recognition of our previous charged interaction. "Orion," I corrected, my eyes still closed, a small, predatory smile playing on my lips. It was a game, now one I was determined to win. "Let's skip the formalities today," I added, a hint of challenge in my voice. The session began, his hands moving with that same precise, almost intuitive rhythm, as if he could map every knot, every ripple of stress under my skin. But my mind wasn't on the physical release. It was entirely focused on the man himself. He truly was an anomaly. Unimpressed by my status, unreadable, like a perfectly still lake with unimaginable depths, and that I realized made him an irresistible challenge. "You know," I said finally, breaking the charged silence, my voice deliberately casual, almost a whisper, "I thought about you last night." It was a bold move, a direct probe into the quiet space he seemed to inhabit. He didn't respond, just continued his work, his hands a steady, unwavering presence. "Hope I didn't keep you up," I continued, pressing just a little harder. His reply was calm, almost too calm, utterly unperturbed. "No, but I lost my appetite." I let out a sharp, brittle laugh, a sound that felt more like breaking glass than genuine amusement. "You're strange, Orion. So distant, like you're not trying to impress anyone, not even me." The words hung in the air, weighted with the unspoken truth of my usual effect on people. "It's not my job to impress," he replied, his voice still even. "It's to help." That was my opening a door I had consciously pushed ajar. "And what if someone wants more than just help, Orion?" I paused, letting the implication hang heavy in the air, a silent invitation. "Let's go out tonight, Orion. Dinner, or nothing formal. Just a bit of time outside this place. You and me." The silence stretched thick with unspoken challenge and the thrum of my own racing pulse. Then, without even a flicker of hesitation, he delivered the blow. "No," he said. Just that, a simple, unadorned no. My carefully constructed composure, the facade I'd worn for decades, cracked wide open. My eyes flew open, blinking at the unexpected defiance. "You're turning down my invitation?" My voice was sharper than I intended, laced with disbelief. "Yes," he confirmed, his gaze meeting mine. "Why?" I demanded, pushing myself halfway up on the table, my eyes locking onto his, a dangerous glint hardening their depths. "Because I'm not interested," he replied, his tone unwavering. A cold, hard fury began to build inside me. Everyone has a price, Orion. I stated, my voice low and laced with a certainty that had never failed me before. His gaze was steady, utterly unshaken. Not me. My hand almost unconsciously went to my blazer pocket, pulling out the pristine white envelope. Inside, a cashier's check for $1 million. For one night. Total privacy. No follow-up, no messages, no contact. His eyes didn't even flicker, remaining fixed on mine, not the envelope. He didn't touch it, just looked at it as if it were a meaningless scrap of paper. Accept it, Orion, I urged, my voice softening, almost pleading, a desperate attempt to regain control of the situation. It's just one night. No strings attached. Just desire. I slipped the envelope into the pocket of his uniform shirt. You don't have to answer now, just think about it. He gently removed his hands from my back, ending the session. Then, with deliberate, agonizing slowness, he took the envelope from his pocket, placed it carefully on the small side table beside him, and said, his voice calm, "It's still no." My jaw clenched so hard I felt my teeth ache. The humiliation was a hot, burning flush across my face, stinging my eyes. No one, absolutely no one, had ever dared to refuse Sloane Thorne like this. And the quiet strength in his eyes, the unwavering conviction, it was infuriating, and to my utter confusion, utterly captivating. The drive back to my penthouse felt less like a commute, and more like hurtling through a tunnel of fire. My mind was a whirlwind of fury and disbelief. Who was this man? How dared he, a simple masseur, reject me, Sloane Thorne, in such a definitive, unyielding way? The sting of that refusal was a foreign, utterly unwelcome sensation, like a raw wound festering beneath my skin. I stormed into my apartment, the plush carpet doing little to cushion the force of my anger, and threw my phone onto the sofa with a grunt of frustration. I needed to forget him, to erase the memory of his calm, infuriating refusal. I wanted to scrub his image, his scent, his very presence from my mind. But the universe, it seemed, had other, far more humiliating plans for Sloane Thorne. It started subtly, an almost imperceptible tremor in the calm of my controlled existence. A nervous call from Alara, my assistant, during what should have been a quiet lunch. "Miss Thorne?" she said, her voice laced with an unusual tremor. "Have you seen social media today?" My blood ran cold, a premonition seizing me. I didn't need to ask why, I knew instantly. My fingers, trembling just slightly, navigated to Instagram, and there it was, a shaky, poorly lit video, taken on a phone, just a few seconds long, of me storming out of the sanctuary, my face a mask of barely contained rage. The caption, a venomous little sting, burned into my vision. "When the masseur turns down the rich lady's offer." The comment section exploded into a digital firing squad. "Looks like the rich lady got what she deserved," one said. Another chimed in, "Did she really offer him money? Plot twist, the guy has integrity." The cruelest one, "She's probably used to buying people," twisted a knife in a wound I hadn't known was there. Each word was a fresh stab, a brutal assault on my carefully curated public image. An image painstakingly built over decades of relentless work, strategic maneuvering, and absolute control. It was crumbling before my eyes, piece by agonizing piece. I, Sloane Thorne, the formidable CEO. The unshakable force had become a meme, a cautionary tale, a joke. The humiliation was absolute, visceral. I felt exposed. Vulnerable in a way I hadn't since childhood, since before I learned to armor myself against the world. This wasn't just a business setback which I could usually navigate with cold logic. This was a personal affront, an attack on my very identity, on everything I thought I was. The media, those vultures, picked up on it, immediately circling the carrion of my public disgrace. By morning, the headline that screamed from every news site, every social media feed, was a dagger to my heart. "Millionaire CEO humiliated by poor masseuse." My phone rang off the hook, a relentless cacophony. My marketing team was in a frenzy, their voices tinny with desperation. "Miss Thorne," Ilara reported, her voice strained. "We've tried everything. It's a private post, no copyright claim. The more we try to remove it, the more attention it gets. It's just amplifying." The words were a bitter pill, difficult to swallow. I, who always had control, who dictated outcomes, was utterly, frighteningly powerless. A cold, hard resolve settled in my gut, hardening me from the inside out. This wasn't just about a viral video anymore. This was about a man, Orion Vance, who had dared to challenge me to expose my vulnerabilities, to make me feel small, to make me feel anything beyond my carefully constructed shell. I would find out who he truly was. I would uncover every single secret, every weakness, every detail of his life. And then I vowed with a chilling certainty that surprised even myself I would make him regret the day he ever said no to Sloane Thorne. My fury was a fuel burning away the last vestiges of my composure, leaving behind only a singular, dangerous determination. This wasn't just a battle, it was a vendetta. The morning after my public humiliation exploded across every digital platform, my fury had solidified into a cold, sharp resolve. There was only one path forward. My first call before even my coffee had cooled was to Alara. I want everything on Orion Vance. I stated my voice, a low, dangerous growl, laced with an intensity that brooked no argument. Everything. Full name, address, family, work history, debts, relationships. I want to know what brand of toothpaste he uses, Alara, and hire the best private investigator in the city. I don't care about the cost. My instruction was absolute. I needed data, facts, any scrap of information that could give me leverage against this infuriating man who had dared to disrupt my carefully ordered universe. 2 agonizing hours later, I spent pacing my penthouse, the headlines flashing on every screen. Alara walked into my office. She held a thin folder, almost insubstantial, in her hand. My eyes immediately fixed on it. I snatched it open. 3 pages, that's all. My initial reaction was disbelief, quickly followed by a chilling realization. That's it. I heard my own voice tight with frustration. This is all. I flipped through the paltry documents, each page feeling thinner than the last. It was as if he barely existed in the digital realm. No Facebook, no Instagram, no LinkedIn, not a single trace of an online footprint. He was a digital ghost, a phantom in a hyper-connected world. The investigator's report confirmed my growing unease. Orion Vance, it stated, had been employed at the sanctuary for 2 years. He rented a small apartment downtown, never married, no criminal record, born in the U.S. That last detail nagged at me. His last name, Vance, sounded like it should carry weight, but there was no discernible public record of any significant family lineage connected to him. What about family? I pressed Alara, leaning forward, my gaze piercing. Surely everyone has family. Alara shook her head, her expression a mix of bewilderment and slight apprehension. No close relatives in the country, Miss Thorne. It's strange. The investigator said it's like he erased his own past, or perhaps even more unsettling, someone erased it for him. The words sent an involuntary shiver down my spine, despite my attempts to remain composed. Who was this man truly? My world was built on information, on connections, on digital footprints, the very currency of modern power. Orion Vance was an anomaly, a blank slate in a world of oversharing, a gaping hole in the matrix of data. It was both incredibly frustrating and, I grudgingly admitted, fascinating. The more I tried to dig, the less I found, and the more my obsession with him intensified, evolving from mere curiosity into something deeper, more consuming. He wasn't just a man who had rejected me. He was a puzzle, a challenge to my very understanding of how the world worked. During a video call with investors in Hong Kong later that afternoon, one of them, a smug, old money type, chuckled, his voice echoing from the speaker. "Sloane, I saw you became internet famous." Laughter rippled in the background from his associates. I physically recoiled, cutting the feed without a word, my face burning with renewed shame. I simply couldn't focus. Every meeting, every multi-million-dollar deal felt trivial compared to the enigma of Orion Vance. I needed answers. I needed to understand what made him tick, what made him so utterly immune to the power I wielded so effortlessly over others. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about a fundamental disruption to my worldview, to my sense of order. And I knew, with every fiber of my being that I wouldn't rest until I restored that order, even if it meant tearing down Orion Vance to do it. By 5 o'clock that afternoon, the simmering frustration had boiled over. I simply couldn't take it anymore. The gnawing curiosity about Orion Vance's blank passed the burning humiliation of being a public spectacle, the sheer frustration of not being in control. It was suffocating me, a crushing weight heavier than any corporate deal. Logic dictated I strategize. My instincts screamed for confrontation. I grabbed my keys, my usual driver be damned, and drove my own car, a sleek black beast, straight to the sanctuary. I walked in with purpose, ignoring the curious glances from the staff, the whispers that followed me like a shadow. My gaze immediately found him. Orion was with a client, his serene demeanor a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. I waited in the lobby, tapping my fingers impatiently on the armrest of an elegant minimalist chair, my patience wearing thin as the quiet hum of the spa seemed to mock me. When he finally emerged, his eyes met mine across the room. There was no surprise, no fear, just that unsettling calm that both infuriated and captivated me. He simply nodded a subtle acknowledgement. "You've got some nerve showing up here," I said, my voice a low, dangerous growl as I pushed myself to my feet, my heels clicking on the polished floor. "This is where I work," he replied, his tone even devoid of any discernible emotion, as if my presence were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. "For now," I countered, a promise or perhaps a threat hanging heavy in my voice. He walked past me, then heading directly to the front desk, beginning to discuss his next appointment with Silas, the spa owner. Silas, a kind-faced man with a perpetually harried expression, seemed to shrink slightly under the intensity of my gaze. I felt my anger flare hot and immediate. "I'm talking to you, Orion!" My voice rose, cutting sharply through the quiet hum of the spa. Heads in the waiting area turned, drawn by the sudden shift in atmosphere. He sighed, a slow, deliberate exhalation that somehow managed to convey both weariness and absolute composure, then finally turned to face me fully. "What do you want, Sloane?" he asked, using my first name casual and unburdened by respect or fear, which felt like another subtle jab, another erosion of my authority. "I want to know who you really are," I demanded, stepping closer, my voice dropping to a fierce, insistent whisper. "I'm a massage therapist," he stated, his response infuriatingly simple. "Liar," I retorted, the word a cutting edge. "No one acts, speaks, or looks the way you do and is just a neighborhood massage guy. This isn't prejudice, Orion, it's experience. I've negotiated with CEOs, presidents, millionaires. I know power when I see it, and you have power. I just don't know where it comes from." He stared at me, his gaze unblinking, his face a perfect mask. "And what if I really am what I seem?" he challenged softly. "Just a regular guy who doesn't want to sell out?" I shook my head, my conviction absolute. "I don't believe it." "Then that's your problem, not mine," he said, turning back toward Silas. My fists clenched, the tips of my fingers digging into my palms. "You humiliated me in public," I hissed, my voice barely controlled. "I just answered your question," he replied, his tone chillingly calm, as if discussing the weather. "Your answer made me a joke," I countered, the memory of the viral video searing my brain. "Your actions made you a joke," he corrected, his voice like ice. "I just witnessed it." The coldness in his words made my anger boil over, scalding my throat. "You're going to regret this, Orion. I'll find out your secrets, and when I do, I'll use them against you. I always get what I want." He simply tilted his head, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. "Find out what? That I work honestly, that I pay my bills on time, that I treat people with respect." His calm was utterly infuriating. "No one is that perfect," I snapped, the words bursting from me. "I'm not perfect," he said, his smile widening just a fraction. "I'm just not what you want me to be." I turned abruptly to Silas, who was watching our exchange with a mixture of apprehension and something I couldn't quite place. Was it admiration for Orion? Disbelief at my audacity? "Silas," I demanded, my voice cutting. "How much does he make here?" Silas stammered, clearly uncomfortable. "Miss Thorne, that's really not my—" "I'll double his salary if you fire him right now." I interrupted the words, a hammer blow meant to end the discussion. The lobby fell utterly silent, every eye now fixed on me, on us. Orion, however, remained calm, watching me with that maddening faint smile. "Do you really think that's going to work?" he asked, his voice still even unbothered. "I'll triple it." I pressed, ignoring him, my voice rising. 3 times his salary. You could hire 2 replacements and still have money left over. Silas looked nervously between us, then back to me, his face pale. "Miss Thorne, I can't make that decision alone. I have to speak to the owner." "Then call him now." I commanded, my patience completely gone. Reluctantly, Silas picked up the phone. After a brief, hushed conversation, he hung up, glancing awkwardly at Orion, who simply watched him. He said, "If you want to fire Orion, you'll have to buy the whole spa." My jaw dropped. The words hung in the air, echoing the absurdity of the situation. "What do you mean?" I managed to croak. Silas swallowed hard, his gaze darting to Orion, then back to me. "Orion is the most requested professional here. Half the clients come here just for him. Firing Orion would be like shutting down the business, and it's not for sale." I blinked, processing the words, a cold dread seeping into my furious determination. He planned this. Orion hadn't just rejected me, he had made himself indispensable. He had built a fortress around himself, using his skill, his quiet power, to become untouchable. Just then, Jax, my head of corporate security, rushed in, looking grim, his imposing presence a welcome sight. "Miss Thorne, I need to speak with you. It's urgent." I gave Orion one last furious, bewildered look. "This isn't over," I vowed. "It never was," he replied, his calm, unwavering, his eyes holding a depth I couldn't fathom. As I followed Jax out, leaving the stunned silence of the sanctuary behind, a chilling realization hit me like a physical blow. Orion Vance wasn't just a challenge, he was a formidable opponent, a player in a game I didn't yet understand, and one I was desperate to learn. Jax led me directly to my car, his face an unusual mask of grim seriousness. The moment he pulled out an old, slightly faded photograph, my heart hitched in my chest. It showed Orion startlingly different, dressed in an expensive, well-tailored suit, standing next to an older man in front of a sleek, modern business building. The contrast to the Orion, I knew the quiet Masseur in his simple uniform, was jarring. "Where did you get this?" I demanded, my voice sharp, with a sudden surge of anticipation. "One of our contacts in the police department," Jax explained, his tone low. "He was digging into some background info for us, and this turned up in an archived file." My eyes greedily scanned the image, searching for clues. "When was this taken?" "About 3 years ago," Jax replied, hesitating slightly. "But Miss Thorne," he continued, his voice lowering, "this man, he's not who you think he is." I snatched the photo from his hand, the paper feeling oddly weighty. "Explain this now," I commanded. Jax revealed that the photo stemmed from an archived investigation from 3 years prior, a complex case involving money laundering and shell companies. Orion had appeared in the records as a witness, then seemed to vanish completely from the official documentation. A witness to what Jax couldn't get the specific details. The case was heavily classified, but the man next to Orion in the photo, the older distinguished one, was Jean-Pierre Dubois. Dubois? I frowned, the name vaguely familiar, but not immediately placing him. That name's supposed to mean something. "Dubois owns half the high-end art galleries in the country, Miss Thorne." Jax stated, a hint of awe in his voice. "And he also owns the sanctuary where Orion works." My blood ran cold, a chilling realization spreading through me. "You're saying that Orion isn't there by accident?" I pressed each word, a dawning, terrifying connection. "Dubois protects him. That's why we couldn't find any info on him. That's why the spa isn't for sale. That's why Orion acts like he's untouchable." I looked at the photo again, my eyes focusing on Orion's face. He was smiling, relaxed, a genuine, unguarded smile, as if he'd known Dubois for years, as if they shared a comfortable, unspoken history. My mind reeled. This was far, far more complex than I had ever imagined. The next morning, the call from Alara jolted me awake even before my alarm could blare. "Miss Thorne, we have news about Orion Vance," she announced, her voice tight with a suppressed urgency. "Did you find something?" I asked, my own voice tight with anticipation, my heart already pounding. "Actually," she began, a note of exasperation in her tone, "he found something about us." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What do you mean?" I demanded, sitting bolt upright in bed. "A letter arrived at the office addressed specifically to you. From the law firm Sterling and Associates. It's about defamation and harassment." Ilara explained, her words a rapid-fire assault. "Orion is claiming you tried to coerce his employer, offered a bribe to have him fired, and are damaging his professional reputation. He has witnesses, everyone who was in the lobby yesterday, including 2 clients who apparently recorded it on their phones." My grip on the phone tightened, my knuckles white. This was ridiculous. I could hire the best lawyers in the country. This was a petty, easily dismissed nuisance. "You can, yes," Ilara said, her voice laced with caution, as if reading my thoughts. "But Miss Thorne, the issue isn't just the lawyers. It's public opinion. If this goes to court, it'll end up plastered all over the news. And after that viral video yesterday—" She didn't need to finish the sentence. I hung up, punching my pillow in a burst of frustrated rage. How had a simple massage therapist, a man with no traceable past, managed to turn the tables like this, outmaneuvering me at every turn? 2 hours later, just as I was debating my next move, Ilara walked into my office, looking genuinely worried. "Miss Thorne Dubois returned our call." A flicker of surprise, then triumph. "He agreed to meet this afternoon at his gallery." Her pause was deliberate. "But there's one condition." My eyes narrowed. "What is it?" "Orion has to be there," she said, almost a whisper. A slow, almost predatory smile spread across my face. Perfect. This was exactly what I wanted. I wanted to look him in the eye when he found out I knew about his connection to Dubois. I had an edge now, a piece of his puzzle. That afternoon, I arrived at Dubois' most elegant gallery in the upscale part of Tribeca, its minimalist glass facade gleaming in the sunlight. The place was hushed empty, save for a few discreet staff and an older man, Jean-Pierre Dubois himself, seated at a minimalist glass table, sipping what looked like green tea. He was shorter than he appeared in the few photos I'd seen, but his presence was undeniable, a quiet authority that filled the vast space. "Miss Thorne." He greeted me, his English accented, but precise, his gaze shrewd. "Mr. Dubois." I replied, my voice cool and controlled, a stark contrast to the churning emotions inside me. "Thank you for seeing me." Just then, a side door opened and Orion appeared. He wore a simple dark dress shirt and jeans, yet somehow in this setting he seemed different, more confident, almost regal. He walked directly to the table, taking the seat next to Dubois, and sat down without even acknowledging my presence. "Looks like you two have things to clear up," Dubois said, with a benign smile, gesturing between us. I didn't waste a second. I cut straight to the point, my voice sharp, accusatory. "I know about your connection. I saw the photo. I know Orion isn't just an employee of yours." Dubois raised an eyebrow, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "What photo?" he asked, his tone innocent. I pulled the faded image from my pocket and placed it on the table between us. Dubois looked at it, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then, to my utter surprise, he let out a genuine, hearty laugh that echoed through the quiet gallery. "Oh, that one," he chuckled, his eyes twinkling. He looked at Orion. "Do you remember this picture, my boy?" Orion nodded, a faint smile on his lips. "Of course. That was the day you saved me." My eyes widened. Saved him? Dubois leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Miss Thorne, may I ask what you think happened 3 years ago?" I didn't hesitate. "Some sort of shady deal, money laundering, corruption." Dubois and Orion exchanged a quick glance, then Dubois started laughing again, a deeper, more profound sound this time. "Miss Thorne," he said, wiping a tear of mirth from his eye, "that photo was taken the day I offered Orion a job. He was homeless, had been sleeping on the streets for 2 weeks. The ground beneath my feet felt like it had shifted violently. What did he mean, Orion? Homeless? My carefully constructed narrative of a manipulative, secretive man, a formidable adversary, began to crack, shattering into 1,000 pieces around me. Dubois continued, his voice gentle but firm, cutting through the stunned silence in the gallery. Orion showed up at my gallery one night. He recounted, his gaze kind, asking just for a glass of water. He was thin, dirty, clearly in bad shape. But there was something about him, something that stood out. Manners, an inherent dignity, even in his desperation. I offered him a meal, and he remarkably insisted on washing dishes in return. Not just once, but every single night for a week, until he'd paid for every bite. I looked at Orion, who sat silently beside Dubois, his face unreadable. My mind still grappled with the fragmented information about a police investigation. Dubois seemed to read my thoughts. He waved a hand dismissively. Oh, that! Orion simply witnessed a robbery on the street and gave the police useful information. Since he didn't have any identification at the time, they had to photograph him for the witness record. No ID? I asked, the words barely a whisper, a stark image of his destitution forming in my mind. Orion spoke for the first time since Dubois's revelation, his gaze meeting mine, directly holding a quiet intensity. I had lost everything. He stated, his voice low and steady, as if recounting a distant memory. My documents, my money, my very identity. Jean-Pierre, he added, glancing at Dubois with genuine gratitude. He helped me rebuild my life. I was stunned, speechless. The pieces of the puzzle weren't fitting together, not in the way I'd expected. But he acted like he had power sophistication. He certainly didn't seem uneducated. I do have an education, Orion said calmly, as if anticipating my unspoken thought. I just don't have money. Where does your education come from, then? I pressed my mind racing, trying to reconcile the image of a homeless man with the articulate, poised individual before me. Orion hesitated for a moment, a fleeting shadow crossing his eyes. Dubois, sensing his reluctance, gently placed a hand on his shoulder. Go ahead, son, he said kindly. She already knows part of the story anyway. It's time for the rest. Orion sighed, a deep, weary sound that seemed to carry the weight of years. I was born into a wealthy family, Sloane. Very wealthy. The Vance family. Old money, influential in New England, with roots going back generations in trade and finance. He paused, his gaze fixed on some unseen point in the distance. But when I was 23, something happened. Something profound. Something that made me walk away from everything and disappear. My heart pounded, sensing the raw vulnerability in his words, the untold tragedy. What was it? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, leaning in across the minimalist glass table. That is personal, he replied, his eyes finally meeting mine, a quiet shield erecting itself around his emotions. So you're from a rich family? I clarified, still grappling with the enormity of this revelation. I was, he corrected, a wry twist to his lips. Now I'm just Orion, the massage therapist Jean-Pierre rescued from the streets. Dubois, ever the gracious host, poured delicate cups of fragrant tea for the three of us, his movements smooth and unhurried. Miss Thorne, Dubois said, his gaze perceptive, may I ask you something? Of course, I replied, still reeling. Why are you so interested in Orion? I opened my mouth to form a reply, but no words came out. For the first time in a long time, I genuinely didn't know what to say. The carefully crafted answer, the one about reclaiming control, about vengeance, felt utterly hollow now. He challenged me. I finally managed the words, hoarse, almost breaking. No one ever said no to you. Dubois nodded slowly, his understanding gaze unwavering. And that bothers you because, he prompted gently, because I paused, the answer right there, agonizingly honest, but so hard to voice aloud. Because maybe I'm not used to people who don't want something from me. The admission hung in the air, a raw, vulnerable truth I had never before articulated. Silence descended then, thick with unspoken truths, a palpable shift in the atmosphere. Miss Thorne, Dubois said kindly, his voice soft, may I give you some advice? I'm listening, I replied, my gaze fixed on him, eager for guidance in this bewildering new territory. Orion isn't a challenge to be conquered, he stated, his words resonating deeply. He's a person to be understood, and understanding people takes patience, respect, and humility. I looked at Orion, who sat watching me. He wasn't looking at me with anger or judgment as I might have expected. Instead, there was only curiosity, a quiet invitation to explore. "You really don't want anything from me?" I asked, plainly needing to hear it again. "Not in the way you've been offering it," he clarified, his voice gentle. "What would be the right way?" I asked, genuinely searching for the answer. Orion thought for a moment, his gaze distant, then returned to mine. "Honesty," he said simply. "I've been honest with you." "Have you?" I challenged softly, a flicker of doubt still clinging to my mind. Orion leaned in slightly, his eyes holding mine. "Or have you just been trying to buy something that's not for sale?" I went quiet, the truth of his words sinking in. Dubois stood up, then his movements fluid. "I'll leave you two to talk," he said, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "I need to check on the gallery." When we were finally alone, the silence was less tense, more expectant. "So what happened 3 years ago, Orion?" I asked, my voice softer, more genuine. "What made you walk away from a wealthy life?" He paused, studying me, perhaps testing my sincerity. "Does it matter?" he countered. "It does to me," I insisted, my voice faltering slightly. "Why?" I hesitated, the words feeling fragile. Because maybe I was wrong about you, and maybe I'd like to really get to know who you are, not just who you seem to be." Orion studied me for a long moment, a genuine smile, not sarcastic or guarded, finally spreading across his face. "That's a start," he conceded. "So you'll tell me?" I asked, a spark of hope igniting within me. "Maybe," he replied, that same honest smile still playing on his lips, "when you show me that you truly want to know who I am, not who I used to be." I took a deep breath, recognizing the test. "How do I show you that?" I asked. "Drop the defamation lawsuit your lawyers are probably already preparing against me," he said, his eyes twinkling with amusement. I blinked, utterly dumbfounded. "How did you—" "Because I know people like you, Sloane," he interrupted, his voice light. "They all react the same way when they don't get what they want." I looked at him for a long moment, a grudging admiration stirring within me. Then, with a decisive gesture, I picked up my phone. "Ilara," I said, my voice clear, "cancel any legal action against Orion Vance now, and drop the investigation too." I hung up and met his gaze. "Done," I said, a small, genuine smile curving my own lips. "Thank you. Now will you tell me?" Orion's smile deepened. "Now you've earned the right to ask again. Next time." I let out a sigh, a profound relief washing over me, but I was smiling too. "You're impossible," I accused playfully. "I'm careful," he corrected. Just then, Dubois returned carrying a tray laden with exquisite desserts. "Did you two work things out?" he asked, his eyes dancing. "We're making progress," I said, glancing at Orion, who nodded subtly. "Good," Dubois said, his smile widening. "So may I invite you to dinner here on Sunday? Orion always has dinner with us on Sundays." "It's a tradition." I looked at Orion, a genuine warmth spreading through me. "Can I come?" I asked, a hint of unfamiliar excitement in my voice. "You can?" he replied, a playful glint in his eyes. "But you'll have to eat with chopsticks." "I know how to use chopsticks," I countered, perhaps a little too confidently. "We'll see." Orion laughed, a genuine, joyful sound that filled the elegant gallery. And for the first time in days, I felt like I might be starting to understand who Orion Vance really was, or at least who he had chosen to become. The rest of the week was a blur of high-stakes meetings, demanding calls, and the relentless pressure of the Thorn Group. Yet through it all, the image of Orion's genuine smile, the one he'd shared with Dubois, and surprisingly with me, stayed with me, a persistent warm ember in the cold steel of my typical days. My usual ruthlessness felt dulled, replaced by a strange, uncharacteristic introspection. I found myself replaying our conversations, analyzing his words, his calm demeanor. The quiet strength that had so infuriated me now intrigued me. The idea of him, once a symbol of my public humiliation, was now a source of perplexing fascination, a puzzle I felt compelled to solve. I even found myself researching the Vance family discreetly, of course delving into old news archives. The articles, buried deep, spoke of a spectacular fall from grace, a financial scandal that had rocked New England's elite whispers of betrayal and ruined reputations. It painted a picture of a world far removed from my own, yet equally cutthroat, just with different rules, different masks. Sunday arrived faster than I expected, bringing with it a sense of quiet anticipation. I chose a casual outfit, my softest jeans and a silk blouse, something I hadn't worn in years, opting for comfort over command. No high heels, no power suits. I just wanted to feel normal for once. The Golden Dragon Dubois's most elegant restaurant was closed to the public, an exclusive oasis of calm. Dubois himself welcomed me at the door with a warm, genuine smile. "Miss Thorne, right on time," he greeted me. "Sloane, please," I corrected softly, returning his smile. "And thank you for the invitation." "Orion is in the kitchen, helping with the prep," Dubois informed me, gesturing deeper into the restaurant. "I hope you don't mind having real homemade Chinese food, not the kind made for tourists." "This will be something new for me," he added with a knowing twinkle in his eye. He led me to a round table at the back, decorated with a simple elegance that spoke of understated luxury. "Jean-Pierre," I began once we were seated, "can I ask you something? Why did you help Orion? I mean, beyond just being kind, was there something special about him?" Dubois poured fragrant tea into 2 small, delicate cups, his movements graceful. "Have you ever seen someone who's hungry turn down food because they couldn't pay for it?" he asked, his gaze steady. I shook my head, surprised by the question. "Orion did that," Dubois revealed, a faint smile playing on his lips. He was clearly undernourished, but he insisted on working before accepting any help. That really impressed me. And after that, then I found out he spoke fluent Mandarin, knew traditional Chinese medicine, could talk about Eastern art and philosophy with an incredible depth. It was like he was born in China, not here. I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Did he study all that? Maybe, Dubois mused. I never asked. But from the first day I knew he wasn't just some guy going through hard times. He was different. Just then, Orion appeared through a swinging kitchen door, carrying a tray laden with several small, exquisite dishes. He wore a simple white shirt and dark pants, a stark contrast to the tailored suits I usually saw. But there was a new lightness about him, a relaxed ease I hadn't witnessed before. "Hope you're hungry," he said, his voice warm, placing the dishes on the table. "Jean-Pierre always makes too much." I looked at the food, delicate, perfectly pleated dumplings, glistening steamed fish, vibrant stir-fried vegetables with unfamiliar fragrant spices, and a clear aromatic soup. "It looks amazing," I murmured, genuinely impressed. "Did you both cook this?" "Jean-Pierre taught me. I learned," Orion replied, sitting down beside Dubois. "It's our tradition. Sundays are for cooking together, like a family." "Exactly." Dubois confirmed a soft affection in his eyes as he looked at Orion. "Orion is like a son to me." During dinner, I discovered a new, completely unexpected side of Orion. He told funny stories about his early clumsy days in the kitchen, did surprisingly accurate impressions of Dubois when he was upset, and laughed easily, a clear, unrestrained sound. He was light-charming, utterly disarming, far from the guarded, stoic man I'd first met. "Orion," I said cautiously, trying out the chopsticks, managing to pick up a small piece of fish. "How did you learn Mandarin? Your fluency is incredible." "I studied when I was younger," he replied, a familiar vagueness entering his voice. "Where, at a private school?" I noticed the hesitation, but for once didn't press, allowing the conversation to flow organically. "Would you teach me a few words?" I asked, a genuine desire to connect overcoming my usual reserve. He smiled that rare open smile. "Thank you is Jexi," he pronounced slowly. "Please is Ching. Sorry is Duibuki." I repeated the words, trying to mimic his tone, the unfamiliar sounds feeling strange on my tongue. "Am I saying it right?" I asked, my brow furrowed in concentration. "Almost. The tone is a little—" Orion leaned in toward me, his proximity sending a subtle shiver down my spine. "May I?" he asked softly, his gaze seeking permission. I nodded, my breath catching slightly. He gently held my chin, his fingers warm against my skin, adjusting the position ever so slightly. Now try duibuki. I repeated this time, to my surprise, more accurately. Perfect, he whispered, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. For a moment our eyes locked, a spark passing between us, a silent current of understanding. Dubois, sensing the intimate moment, quietly got up. "I'll get dessert," he announced, disappearing back into the kitchen. When we were finally alone, the air felt charged, yet comfortably so. "Why do you speak Mandarin so well, Orion?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, no longer demanding but seeking true comprehension. "And don't give me that I studied in school line. Your accent is perfect, native." Orion sighed, the brief moment of lightness fading, replaced by a quiet solemnity. "My mother was Chinese," he revealed, his voice soft. "Was?" I asked, sensing the pain in his words. "She died when I was 15, he explained, his gaze distant, clouded with a profound sadness. "She taught me the language, the culture, the cooking. She said it was important to stay connected to our roots." The depth of his grief, still palpable after so many years, touched something unexpected within me. "And your father?" I asked gently. "He died too later on," Orion said, his voice flat. "Is that when you lost everything?" I pressed, connecting the dots of his story, the Vance family's downfall. Orion looked at me for a long moment, his eyes holding a depth of sorrow and resilience. "That's part of the story, yes," he finally confirmed, leaving the rest unsaid, a silent promise of future revelations. Dubois returned with dessert, a delicate platter of fresh fruit and small, intricately crafted traditional Chinese sweets. "Sorry for the wait," he apologized, settling back into his seat. "I had to take an important call." Orion looked at him, his brow furrowed slightly with concern. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Actually," Dubois hesitated, glancing between us, "it was about tomorrow's event." My interest immediately piqued. "What event?" I asked, setting down my teacup. "I have a business dinner," Dubois explained, a hint of weariness in his voice. "International investors. I'm trying to expand my galleries into other countries, particularly in Asia." "What kind of investors?" I inquired, a flicker of professional curiosity stirring. "Mostly Chinese." Orion, who had been relaxed moments before, now sat up straighter, a subtle tension entering his posture. "Jean-Pierre," he began, his voice firm, "I already told you I'm not—" I know," Dubois interrupted gently, but then he looked at me, a mischievous glint in his eye. "But Orion, you speak Mandarin way better than my official interpreter, and you understand the cultural nuances. It's just for one evening. As an interpreter—" I turned to Orion, surprised. "You work as an interpreter sometimes?" "I help Jean-Pierre with simple translations," Orion admitted almost defensively. "Nothing official, just simple." Dubois laughed, a warm booming sound that filled the elegant dining room. "Miss Thorne, you should see Orion in a business meeting. He doesn't just translate, he understands cultural nuances, reads between the lines, knows when someone's not being honest, just by a slight shift in their posture or tone." I leaned forward, genuinely interested. "Really?" "Jean-Pierre's exaggerating." Orion mumbled, a faint blush rising on his cheeks. "I'm not," Dubois insisted. "Remember Mr. Wu last month? You realized he was lying about the numbers before I even suspected he wasn't completely upfront." "What numbers?" I asked, sensing a deeper story. Orion looked uncomfortable, clearly wishing to change the subject. "He was inflating the ingredient costs to justify a higher contract price for some art supplies," he explained reluctantly. "How did you figure that out?" I pressed, looking at Orion with growing admiration for this unexpected skill. "He changed his tone when mentioning specific amounts," Orion replied, shrugging slightly. "That's common when someone's not being totally honest or is trying to manipulate a negotiation." I felt a sudden profound respect for his acute observation skills. "Where did you learn that?" I asked, a hunger for knowledge in my voice. "What kind of experience, Orion?" Before he could answer, my phone rang, a jarring intrusion into the serene atmosphere. It was Alara. "Sorry," I murmured, answering the call, my mind already shifting gears. "Hello, Miss Thorne. Sorry to bother you on a Sunday, but we have an emergency." Her voice was tight with stress, a clear indicator of the gravity of the situation. What kind of emergency? I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. Tomorrow's meeting with the Korean investors, she explained, her words clipped. The official interpreter just canceled. The flu, apparently. My stomach tightened. The meeting was crucial, representing a potential $15 million expansion into the Asian market, a key part of the Thorn Group's future. We don't have a backup, Alara continued, her voice rising in panic. We tried 3 agencies already. It's a holiday weekend in Korea, Miss Thorne. All the good interpreters are booked solid. I looked at Orion, who was now talking quietly with Dubois, their conversation a low murmur, oblivious to my escalating crisis. Alara, I said, my voice firm despite the rising anxiety. Give me 10 minutes. I'll take care of it. I hung up and turned back to the table, my gaze fixed on Dubois. Jean-Pierre, about that business dinner tomorrow. Is it by any chance at the Hyatt Regency? Dubois and Orion exchanged surprised looks, their conversation immediately ceasing. How did you know? Dubois asked, his eyes wide. Because I also have a meeting there, I explained, meeting Orion's gaze, with Korean investors, and I just lost my interpreter. Orion straightened up, his eyes now sharp and assessing. What kind of meeting? He asked, his voice calm, professional. Thorn Group expansion into the Asian market, I replied, deliberately clear. 15 million in initial investment. It's critical. Dubois whistled softly, a low sound of appreciation. That's a big meeting. Very big, I confirmed, my gaze holding Orion's. And if I can't communicate properly, if I lose the nuance, I let the implication hang in the air. Orion? I said, a glimmer of desperate hope igniting within me. Do you speak Korean? Orion hesitated for a moment, then replied, I do, fluently, fairly well. Dubois immediately scoffed, a fond exasperation in his voice. Fairly, Orion. You watched a Korean movie with me last month and you were translating jokes the subtitles missed. You're practically native. A real spark of hope ignited within me, brighter than any I'd felt in days. This was it. The solution. Orion? I began, leaning forward, my voice earnest. Would you consider helping me? What do you mean? He asked, his eyes unreadable. Be my interpreter. I clarified, my desperation barely concealed. Just for one night. I'll pay well, of course, more than well. Anything you want. Orion shook his head slowly. Sloane, he said, his voice gentle. It's not about money. Then what is it about? I pressed, my frustration bubbling to the surface. I don't understand. I don't do that kind of work anymore. He explained, his gaze distant. What kind? I asked, sensing a deeper story. Corporate, business, high-level meetings, that world. I leaned across the table, my voice dropping to a low, insistent plea. Why, Orion was silent for a long moment, his eyes searching mine. Then he looked at Dubois, who gave a subtle, supportive nod. Because the last time I was in a meeting like that, Orion confessed, his voice barely a whisper, it was the day I lost everything. A chill ran down my spine, a cold knot forming in my stomach. What happened? I asked, my voice hushed. Orion hesitated again, his eyes darkening with a memory. If I agree to help you tomorrow, he said, his gaze piercing, you're going to see a side of me you might not expect, and it might change the way you see me. For better or worse, I don't know. Depends on what you're looking for. My mind raced, weighing the immense risk against the potential reward. This was it, the truth. The real story behind Orion Vance, the reason for his self-imposed exile from that world of power and wealth. The risk was immense, the vulnerability terrifying, but the potential reward, understanding this man, and perhaps saving my crucial deal, was too great to ignore. I'm looking for the truth, Orion, I said, my voice steady, meeting his gaze with unwavering conviction, and I'm ready for whatever I find. The next morning, the crisp New York air felt charged with an unusual anticipation as I pulled up to the sanctuary. Orion emerged not in his humble therapist's uniform, but in a sharp, tailored suit, a stark contrast to his usual casual attire. He looked utterly at home in it, radiating an understated power that made my breath catch. He was no longer just the Masseur from Chelsea. He was a corporate chameleon, effortlessly blending into the high-stakes world I inhabited, yet carrying an aura that was distinctly his own. At the opulent Hyatt Regency, he moved with a quiet confidence that belied his humble profession, greeting Dubois with a respectful nod before turning to me. "Ready, Sloane," he murmured, his voice a low, steadying presence. His proximity, his presence next to me felt both reassuring and strangely electrifying. In the hushed meeting room, the Korean investors, a formidable group, known for their shrewdness, eyed him with clear curiosity. As the discussions began, Orion underwent a complete transformation. He didn't just translate words. He translated intent nuance, the unspoken cultural cues that could make or break a multi-million-dollar deal. He anticipated questions before they were fully voiced, masterfully rephrased my aggressive statements into polite inquiries, and even interjected with insightful observations about the Korean market that clearly impressed everyone at the table. I watched him mesmerized, seeing a different facet of the man who had so thoroughly disrupted my carefully constructed world. He was a force of nature, contained and precise. During a brief break, I pulled him aside, my voice hushed. "Orion, you're incredible," I whispered, genuinely awestruck. "Where did you learn all this? This isn't just studying in school." He smiled faintly, a shadow of an old pain flitting across his eyes. "My family," he began, his voice taking on a distant quality. The Vance Group was a major player in international trade. My father, Cassian, he believed in understanding every culture we worked with. I was groomed for it from birth, expected to step into that world. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken history, a legacy I now understood had been tragically cut short. "So what happened?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended the question, driven by a burgeoning empathy rather than mere curiosity. He looked out the window, his gaze distant, fixed on the chaotic city below. "My older brother Alistair, he was supposed to take over." Orion recounted, his voice devoid of self-pity, just a raw, honest recounting of a profound loss. He was brilliant, charismatic, but reckless. He made a series of catastrophic investments, hidden from my father, from everyone. When the market crashed, it all unraveled. Our fortune, our reputation, everything we had built for generations, simply vanished. He paused, a deep breath filling his lungs. My father tried to cover it up, to save the family name, but it only made things worse. He died shortly after, from a broken heart, I think. My mother, Lyra, she retreated completely into herself, never truly recovering. His eyes met mine, a raw vulnerability in their depths. I saw the hypocrisy, the greed, the way that power had ultimately corrupted everything, destroyed everything. I walked away, disappeared. I wanted no part of that world anymore. A pang of unexpected empathy resonated within me. My own family, the Thorne Group, had its own share of scandals, its own hidden truths, its own ruthless climb. I understood the weight of legacy, the crushing pressure to maintain an image even when it cost you everything. After the meeting, which was a resounding success thanks entirely to Orion's unparalleled skills, I felt a new kind of connection to him. It wasn't the transactional kind I was used to, the give and take of business. It was deeper, born from a shared understanding of loss, of the burdens of legacy, and a glimpse into his true wounded self. "Orion," I said as we walked out of the conference room, the hum of successful negotiations still echoing around us. "I need to see it, your family's estate. In Maine?" He looked at me, surprised by the unexpected request. "Why?" he asked, his brow furrowed slightly. "Because I need to understand," I explained, my voice earnest, "to see where you came from, to see the world you walked away from. I need to see the ghosts that still haunt you." He hesitated for a long moment, his eyes searching mine as if weighing my sincerity. Then with a slow nod, he agreed. "All right," he said, his voice soft. "But it's not what you expect." The next weekend, I found myself driving north, away from the glittering, suffocating concrete jungle of New York, towards the rugged, untamed coast of Maine. The Vance estate was not the grand, imposing mansion I had imagined, not the sort of gleaming fortress I was used to. It was a sprawling, elegant, but clearly neglected property, nestled amidst overgrown gardens and towering pines, overlooking a wild, windswept ocean. It felt less like a home and more like a ghost, a monument to a vanished era, to a powerful family's spectacular rise and equally spectacular fall. As I walked through the decaying halls, the silence was deafening, filled with the echoes of a forgotten empire. I saw the faded photographs, the dusty trophies, the remnants of a life of privilege and expectation, all coated in a film of time and sorrow. And for the first time, truly profoundly, I began to understand the depth of Orion's choice, the immense courage it must have taken to walk away from all of this, to forge a new path, and to find a fragile peace in anonymity. My visit to the Vance estate, wandering through those decaying halls filled with phantom echoes, solidified something profound within me. Orion wasn't just a man who had captivated my curiosity. He was a survivor, a man of profound integrity forged in the crucible of loss and self-discovery. Our connection deepened, moving beyond the initial sparks of attraction and curiosity into something far more profound, a shared understanding of the invisible burdens of legacy and the corrupting complexities of power. For a brief, blissful period, it felt like a fragile peace had settled over my chaotic life. But peace, as I knew too well from years in the cutthroat corporate world, was often fleeting. A few weeks after my main trip, just as I was starting to breathe easier, a new crisis erupted at the Thorn Group. It began subtly a ripple in the calm waters, then escalated into a full-blown hostile takeover attempt orchestrated by a shadowy conglomerate calling themselves Aegis Holdings. Their tactics were aggressive, their moves precise, almost surgical, as if they knew our every weakness, every vulnerability. My father Marcus was furious, convinced it was a rival he'd crossed years ago, a vendetta resurfacing. But I suspected something more insidious, something deeper, a game being played on a chessboard I didn't yet fully comprehend. As the pressure mounted, the stress threatening to drag me back into the tightly wound spring I'd once been, I found myself instinctively turning to Orion. I told him about Aegis, about the unsettling feeling that someone was playing a deeper, more personal game. He listened intently, his eyes thoughtful, a familiar stillness settling over him. Aegis Holdings. He murmured the name, seemingly triggering something deep within his memory. I've heard that name before. Not in the public sphere, not in the headlines, but in the periphery of my old life. He then revealed another layer of his hidden world, a facet of his life during his years of anonymity that truly astonished me. He hadn't just been a masseur, he had in his quiet way built a vast informal network of contacts, disgruntled former employees of powerful corporations, disillusioned insiders. People who, like him, had seen the ugly underbelly of the elite world and chosen to step away, retreating into the shadows. They were ghosts in the system, invisible to the public eye, but they had eyes and ears everywhere. Through this astonishing network, Orion began to uncover Aegis Holdings' true nature. It wasn't just a conglomerate. It was a shell corporation, a cunning front for a powerful, vindictive figure from the past, someone with a direct, devastating connection to the Vance family's downfall. The architect of Aegis Holdings, Orion, discovered with chilling certainty, was none other than Elias Thorn, my estranged uncle, a disgraced former executive of the Thorn Group who had been quietly building his own empire for years, fueled by a long-standing venomous grudge against my father Marcus. And even more shocking, Elias had formed a secret alliance with the very people, the same corrupt individuals who had brought down the Vance family. Elias had been manipulating the market, using the same illicit tactics that had ruined Orion's family to systematically undermine the Thorn Group, to tear down everything I had built. The revelation was a gut punch, leaving me breathless. My own blood, my own uncle, seeking to destroy everything I had worked for, everything my family represented. But Orion's network didn't stop there. They also uncovered the crucial piece of evidence, a hidden ledger detailing Elias's illegal dealings, a meticulous record that included his direct complicity in the Vance family's ruin, his betrayals laid bare. This wasn't just about saving my company anymore. It was about justice for Orion's family, a chance to expose the truth that had been buried for years, cloaked in secrecy and deceit. We had to act, and we had to do it together. The stakes were higher than ever, intertwining our fates in a way I never could have imagined, and I realized with a fierce surge of determination that I wouldn't face this battle alone. I had an ally, a partner forged in fire and shared vulnerability. The final confrontation with Elias Thorne was a tense, high-stakes affair, a culmination of weeks of relentless strategic planning. We orchestrated a strategic leak of the hidden ledger to a trusted investigative journalist, a calculated move designed to expose his intricate web of deceit. Simultaneously, my legal team initiated a sweeping offensive launching lawsuits that targeted every facet of his illicit empire. Orion, with his deep intuitive understanding of the corporate underworld and his invaluable network of quiet informants, was absolutely invaluable. He guided me through the labyrinthine financial structures Elias had built, identifying crucial weaknesses, predicting his every desperate move before he made it. I, in turn, leveraged my position, my formidable legal team, and my considerable public influence to ensure the story gained maximum traction and that the authorities were forced to act swiftly and decisively. It was a brutal, exhausting battle fought day and night, but we faced it side by side. Through every grueling negotiation, every late-night strategy session, I saw Orion not just as a man of quiet strength, but as a brilliant strategist, a truly formidable ally whose insights were sharper than any corporate analyst I'd ever employed. And he, I believe, saw me not just as a ruthless CEO, but as a woman capable of humility, of growth, and of a fierce, unyielding loyalty to those she genuinely cared about. Elias Thorne was ultimately exposed, his meticulously constructed empire crumbling under the overwhelming weight of the evidence we had meticulously gathered. The Thorne Group weathered the storm bruised but not broken, emerging stronger, and with a renewed sense of purpose cleansed of the shadows Elias had cast. For Orion, it was a bittersweet victory. The truth about his family's devastating downfall was finally public. Their name, somewhat vindicated, the cloud of suspicion lifted. But the deep pain of loss of a shattered past remained a quiet ache that would likely never fully disappear. He visited his mother Lyra in Maine, a quiet reunion, a space for shared grief, and finally a measure of peace. He decided to continue his work at the sanctuary, finding genuine fulfillment in the simple, honest act of helping people find solace and relief. Yet, he also embraced a new role, becoming a trusted advisor to Dubois, using his unique insights into business and human nature to help the gallery expand ethically, carefully beyond its current boundaries. He was no longer just running from his past. He was integrating it, using its harsh lessons to build a meaningful, purposeful future, a bridge between who he was and who he was becoming. As for me, Sloane Thorne, my world had been irrevocably changed. The suffocating obsession with control, once my defining characteristic, had softened, replaced by a deeper understanding of human connection and the true meaning of value, something that couldn't be bought or sold. My relationship with Orion was unlike anything I had ever experienced, a partnership built on respect, on unflinching honesty, and a profound mutual understanding that transcended words. We continued our Sunday dinners with Jean-Pierre, a quiet, cherished ritual that grounded me, a weekly anchor in my still demanding life. I learned to appreciate the simple things, the genuine moments of laughter and connection, the unbuyable peace that Orion had always embodied. I was still a CEO, still driven, still ambitious, but I was no longer defined solely by my ambition or my wealth. I had found a different kind of richness, a deeper sense of self, thanks to the man who had dared to say no to $1 million, and in doing so had opened my eyes to a world I never knew existed, a world filled with authentic emotions and profound connections. My life, once a meticulously constructed fortress, designed to keep everything out, was now a vibrant, open landscape filled with the promise of genuine connection and the quiet, enduring strength of a love I hadn't known I desperately needed. What does the future hold for Sloane and Orion now that their worlds have so profoundly intertwined? The story of Sloane and Orion is more than just a tale of corporate intrigue and unexpected romance. It's a profound journey into the very essence of what it means to be human in a world often defined by power and wealth. Sloane, initially a woman hardened by her relentless pursuit of control, discovers that true strength isn't about dominance, but about vulnerability, authenticity, and the courage to shed one's carefully constructed facades. Her transformation reminds us that even in the most rigid of lives, there's always room for growth and redefinition. It challenges us to ask, what masks do we wear in our own lives, and what authentic self lies hidden beneath them? Orion, on the other hand, embodies a quiet resilience and an unwavering commitment to integrity even after profound loss. He shows us that true value isn't measured in bank accounts or titles, but in the richness of character, the depth of one's principles, and the quiet satisfaction of living a life aligned with one's true self. His journey highlights the immense courage it takes to walk away from a destructive past and forge a new path based on genuine connection and purpose. It makes us ponder, are we truly living a life of purpose, or are we simply chasing external validations that may never truly satisfy us? Their intertwined paths reveal that sometimes the greatest treasures aren't found in what we seek, but in what we initially reject. Sloane's $1 million offer, a symbol of her attempt to buy control, was met with Orion's resounding no, a refusal that ultimately opened the door to an unbuyable, far more valuable connection. This beautifully illustrates that life's most profound gifts often arrive disguised as rejections or challenges forcing us to redefine what we truly value. If this story resonated with you, if it made you pause and reflect on your own journey, leave a comment below and share your thoughts. We love hearing from you. And if you're hungry for more stories that explore the depths of human connection, resilience, and transformation, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next video.